Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Silurian Hypothesis. Could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs? Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In April 2018, NASA climate scientist Gavin Schmidt and astrophysicist Gavin Frank published a paper in the International Journal of Astrobiology asking a question that had previously been the territory of science fiction. Is it possible that an industrial civilization existed on Earth before humans, and would we be able to detect it? They named the thought experiment the Silurian Hypothesis, after the Doctor Who aliens, a reptilian species that evolved before humanity in the show's fictional timeline. Their answer was genuinely unsettling. For any civilization that existed more than a few million years ago, the geological record would likely preserve no trace of its buildings, roads, or artifacts. These would be eroded, subducted, or chemically dissolved. What might survive is a chemical signature, anomalous concentrations of certain isotopes, industrial pollutants, or evidence of rapid atmospheric change baked into sediment layers. Schmidt and Frank noted that our own industrial civilization would leave exactly such a signature, and that some past extinction boundaries already contain anomalies matching that profile. Schmidt and Frank were not claiming a prior civilization existed. They were asking something harder: if it had, would we know? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the expanding frontier of unexplained cosmic phenomena, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The scale of the universe is so far beyond ordinary intuition that even physicists struggle to hold it in mind. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. The Milky Way alone has between 100 and 400 billion stars. Conservative estimates suggest that 1 in 5 of those stars has a planet in the habitable zone, the orbital range at which liquid water can exist on the surface. That gives our galaxy alone somewhere between 20 and 80 billion potentially habitable worlds. Against those numbers, the claim that Earth is the only planet to have produced intelligent life seems extraordinary. The statistical argument for extraterrestrial life is almost overwhelming, and yet we have no confirmed contact, no artifact, no verifiable signal. The contrast between the mathematical expectation of abundant life and the apparent emptiness of the cosmos is the Fermi paradox, and it is one of the deepest unsolved problems in science. The paradox has generated dozens of proposed solutions. From the Great Filter Hypothesis, some catastrophic barrier prevents civilizations from becoming spacefaring, to the Zoo Hypothesis, they are watching us, but not yet making contact, to the simulation argument, the universe we observe is itself an artifact. None of these has been confirmed. All of them have troubling implications. The Fermi paradox is not a curiosity. It may be the most important question the human species has ever faced. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Silurian hypothesis, could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Gavin Schmidt, director of NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and astrophysicist Gavin Frank of the University of Rochester published the Silurian Hypothesis. Would it be possible to detect an industrial civilization in the geological record? In the International Journal of Astrobiology in April 2018. The paper is peer-reviewed and explicitly speculative in purpose. It is a thought experiment in detection methodology, not a claim that a prior civilization existed. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the geological record preserves increasingly little information about surface conditions the further back in time one looks. Tectonic plate recycling destroys oceanic crust on timescales of hundreds of millions of years. Erosion eliminates surface structures. Schmidt and Frank calculated that any industrial civilization existing before approximately 1 million years ago would likely leave no identifiable artifacts, only a potential chemical anomaly in sediment layers. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine industrial activity at human scale produces a distinctive chemical signature, a rapid rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane, a carbon isotope excursion, a shift in the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13, elevated concentrations of nitrogen compounds, and in the modern era, the presence of synthetic polymers. Schmidt and Frank calculated what this signature would look like if preserved in sediment and identified what geological boundaries to examine for comparison. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Permian-Triassic boundary, 252 million years ago, marks Earth's largest mass extinction event, the Great Dying, during which approximately 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species were eliminated. The boundary layer contains a carbon isotope excursion and a rapid temperature spike strikingly similar in profile to the chemical signature of industrial activity. Mainstream science attributes this to the Siberian Traps supervolcanic eruption, which is well evidenced. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of, the paper explicitly states that Schmidt and Frank do not believe a prior industrial civilization existed. Its stated purpose is to inform the search for technosignatures on exoplanets, chemical evidence of industrial activity on distant worlds detectable by telescopes. By working out what Earth's geological record would look like if we ourselves had not been the first industrial species, the paper develops a framework for evaluating similar signatures observed elsewhere. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence, converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: no artifact from a pre-human industrial civilization has been found anywhere on Earth. The fossil record is extensive for organisms, but contains no manufactured objects older than those produced by hominins in the last few million years. Schmidt and Frank's argument is that this absence is not conclusive proof against a prior civilization. It is consistent with one that existed long enough ago that artifacts have been destroyed by geological processes, though they do not regard this as a probable scenario. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Silurian Hypothesis. Could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs? This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that we cannot rule out a prior industrial civilization on Earth from the geological record alone. This is Schmidt and Frank's own framing of their paper. They identify specific chemical anomalies in the geological record, including at the Permian-Triassic boundary, that match the profile of what industrial pollution would look like after millions of years. They do not claim these anomalies are caused by a civilization. They use them to calibrate detection methodology. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that no pre-human industrial civilization existed, and the geological record, while imperfect, would likely preserve some detectable trace if one had. This is the mainstream position. Even if artifacts were destroyed, widespread industrial activity would have left multiple overlapping chemical signatures across sediment layers on several continents. The absence of any such pattern, beyond those explained by volcanic and impact events, is strong negative evidence. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Permian-Triassic chemical anomalies are fully explained by the Siberian Traps volcanic event, one of the largest volcanic episodes in Earth's history, releasing enormous quantities of carbon and sulfur over tens of thousands of years. RS, independent geochemical evidence for the Siberian Traps at the PT boundary, is robust. Schmidt and Frank acknowledged this explanation. The comparison to industrial signatures was illustrative, not a claim the volcanic explanation is wrong. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Silurian Hypothesis, could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the Permian-Triassic boundary sediment layer shows a carbon isotope excursion and temperature spike that, in shape and magnitude, resemble the chemical profile that Schmidt and Frank calculate industrial civilization would produce. They present this as an illustration of what to look for, not as evidence of a prior civilization. Independent geological evidence strongly supports the Siberian Traps volcanic explanation for this boundary's anomalies. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. Schmidt and Frank's calculations show that industrial-scale nitrogen pollution, carbon emissions, and synthetic polymer production would leave detectable signatures in sediment for geologically short periods, perhaps tens of thousands to a few millions of years. Beyond that timescale, these signatures would be chemically assimilated into background levels. This estimate defines the window within which a prior civilization might still be detectable, and no anomalies within that window have been identified. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed. The fossil record provides strong negative evidence against any complex pre-human civilization capable of industry. Large-brained, dexterous animals with the biological prerequisites for tool use and language appear only in the primate lineage and only within the last tens of millions of years. No fossil record suggests a prior lineage reached cognitive complexity comparable to humans. Schmidt and Frank's paper treats this as relevant context while noting it does not make the hypothesis impossible. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Silurian Hypothesis. Could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs? Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Schmidt and Frank's paper is genuine peer-reviewed science and has been accurately reported by most science journalists. It has also been widely misrepresented in alternative history communities as NASA scientists claiming a prior civilization existed, which is the opposite of what the paper says. The paper's actual purpose developing a framework for detecting technosignatures on exoplanets is scientifically productive and connects to active research programs using space telescopes. Mainstream science does not believe a prior industrial civilization existed on Earth. The Silurian Hypothesis is a tool for thinking about detection problems in astrobiology, not an archaeological claim. Its value is methodological, and its authors have been clear about that from the beginning. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Silurian Hypothesis. Could a civilization have existed before the dinosaurs? From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Silurian Hypothesis ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.